Impossible cheeseburger pie or impossibly easy cheeseburger pie. Whatever you called it growing up, this is a recipe that so many people wrote in and told me that they grew up with and loved. And so I want to share with you today how to make this kind of wacky and crazy casserole pie. And I'm joined here in the kitchen by my friend Sarah from 2geekswhoeat.com. She and her husband Matthew have a really fun food blog, which you can definitely go check out down the description box below. She's gonna share some stories about this recipe, and I'm gonna show you how to make it from scratch.
Before my sisters went off to college, my mom had to make a pound of hamburger meat, feed 5 people. So she came up with everything under the sun, and I'm sure, Bisquick was cheap at the time, so for her, feeding a family of 5 was a challenge, and how better to do it than with burger? No, it doesn't. It's a cheeseburger pie, but it doesn't taste to me like a cheeseburger. It reminds me more of like a meatloaf with like cheese on it. Like this is childhood. This is impossible to make cheeseburger pie. Like it doesn't get much better in life than that.
So just like any great Midwestern casserole, I'm starting off with ground beef, and I'm using a lean ground beef just because I don't want a whole lot of extra fat to have to drain off. And then I also add to that 1 onion diced up really into a nice fine dice. Now, I did depart from the original recipe as Sarah's mom had outlined it, and as you will find if you Google this recipe, Impossible Cheeseburger Pie online. But I just wanted to add a little bit of extra flavor and savoriness with some Worcestershire sauce and then also some Lawry seasoning salt, which is that magic little thing that you can just add to things and it just makes it a little extra savory. And then of course, don't forget the salt and pepper. Then mix all of that up until it is good and browned, and then I transfer it into a pie plate. Although you could put this really into any sort of casserole dish. I would do maybe a 9x9 pan if you were gonna go square, but do make sure that it is oven safe because this is going in the oven in a bit.
I just remember the name, like it was always so silly to me, just like impossible to make cheeseburger pie. Like it always just sticks out for that reason, just because it was so silly. Like my mom is not she has a very dry sense of humor. So for her to have something that has a very silly name just always was interesting to me as a child. Like I just didn't get it, and maybe I didn't understand why it was impossible to make. And as a kid, I actually didn't like the onions in it. I was not a fan of the onion. I used to pick them out. Now I love onions. I haven't eaten this dish at all. Probably, since I was 15. My mom went through a gourmet cooking phase, and so all ground beef recipes kind of got pushed to the wayside, and she stopped doing her meatloafs, and she could afford scallops. Why would we eat Impossible Cheeseburger Pie when we could have scallops and salmon?
So then on to component 2 of our 3-component process making this Impossible Cheeseburger Pie is the biscuit mixture. Now, a lot of the recipes will call for good old-fashioned Bisquick, and you can definitely use that, but I like to make things a little more complicated. So I've made my own, and it's actually not that hard to do. So you just take some flour and some baking powder and then some really good cold butter and take a pastry cutter and cut the butter into the flour mixture, just like you're making a homemade pie crust, which you guys know I'm a huge fan of making pie crust. So this just made a whole lot of sense to do, and it tastes really great. Then once you've got the butter in nice little gravelly pieces, this is where we add the wet ingredients, and you're gonna add some eggs and some milk. Also add a little bit of salt because that never hurts. But this is the part of the process where I tried it multiple different ways to prevent it from getting lumpy. I would add 1 egg at a time. I would add just a little bit of milk at a time. Really, there wasn't any good solution except for taking my immersion blender and sticking it in there until it was nice and smooth, because you do want to make sure it's smooth. Otherwise, you're going to end up with some very visible clumping going on in your final dish, and that is just not cute and not delicious. And then we take that biscuit mix and you pour it over the top of the meat and onion mixture. And then the final and 3rd layer, which is to me the most important layer when it comes to any casserole, is you top it with cheese. And I'm using cheddar cheese, which is the originally prescribed type of cheese to use, but I went a little extra heavy-handed. I figured you wouldn't mind having some extra cheese, right? So I think most recipes are calling for maybe about a half cup, a quarter cup. I just committed to the full cup and I'll ask for forgiveness later. So, and then to finish this pie off, all we have to do is bake it. And this is super easy. You just stick it straight in the oven. You don't need to tent it. You don't need to cover it with foil. Just 375 degrees for 25 minutes. And what you're gonna see is that nice brown and melty top on there. And then it's gonna be nice and solid underneath. It's gonna firm up. That's when it's ready. So now obviously Sarah has had this pie before, but Matthew, her husband, who's the other half of Two Geeks Who Eat, he has never tried this before. So here for you guys on camera, his true and honest reaction to his first time having impossible to make cheeseburger pie.
To eat his first bite.
Yes, Impossible hamburger pie. I've heard about it recently. I gotta see what it's all about.
Pressure's on.
Yeah, that's good. I can get down on that.
Yeah? Mm-hmm. Of course you can. You amped up that cheese.
I want to look right.
I don't remember my mom's ever having this much cheese.
Who doesn't like cheese, though?
But that's better. That is so much better than my mom's. Don't tell her I said that. Yeah, the meat is definitely way more flavorful.
Savory, rich, like this is like, you go back for like seconds, thirds.
Eat the whole pie.
Yeah, probably. That's what I would do.
I'm in childhood right now, except I'm not being told to get my elbows off the table, and I'm not having to like do dishes afterwards. How would you feel if I made this with hatch chilies?
Oh, you're speaking my language. Yes.
So thank you so much for joining us for this episode, and thank you to Sarah and Matthew for joining me here in the kitchen. If you want the full recipe and to find the geeks online, all you have to do is head to the description box below. I will have everything linked there, or head to joaniesimon.com. I've got all the information. But if you like this video, or if you grew up with impossible to make cheeseburger pie, definitely give this video a thumbs up. Or if you've got a crazy recipe that you want to share with me, I'd love to hear it. So leave your comments below. But if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe, because I will be back with another crazy recipe, something delicious just for you next week, and I don't want you to miss it. So you have a great week. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.